Well, drivers were in for a real shock when they filled up for gas yesterday. Prices rising 4.4 cents a liter to more than $1.12 a liter. And joining us now to make sense of it all is Nick Bontis, an award-winning professor from the DeGroote School of Business. Always nice to have you here, Nick.
How are you, Taz?
Very well. So the question everyone wants to know is why? Why did they spike so much so quickly?
Well, I'll be honest with you, it doesn't make sense to me.
Really?
It's definitely not market forces, Taz. I have a feeling that something funky is going on with the gas prices here, and it all relates to the refineries. It's the retailers that set the prices, but it's the refineries that are suffering from supply and demand. And you have to go back to September 2010 when one of the big refineries in Canada in East Montreal got shut down. And when it got shut down by Shell kept on telling everybody across the country there would be no effect on prices. Well, sure enough, there's effect on prices. There's less refinery, less supply in the system. We also have a competitive bureau in terms of Stephen Harper, who was very, very weak in talking about the issues of collusion. And at the end of the day, you also have Ottawa and Toronto, who just love the tax revenue they're getting with gases. And increased gas prices means increased tax revenue. So you put all those factors together, and it's a perfect storm for volatility. In
so what are you
gas
saying?
prices.
The collusion does exist then?
Well, you know what? No one's been able to prove it. But the thing that I don't understand, Taz, is how can it not? For example, you have individuals who are predicting that the price of gas is going to go up or down by a certain amount before it actually happens. Well, that's unorthodox. That's not how the market works. You're not supposed to know what happens before it actually happens.
That actually is very interesting because there were emails going out to people saying, fill up your gas now because the prices are going to go up.
Yeah.
Well, speaking of that, it seems to be even more difficult to forecast where gas is going.
Right.
A couple of weeks ago, I asked you where you thought gas was going to go and how much a consumer should expect to spend percentage-wise on their gas bill, and you said 10%.
That's right.
Well, Dan McTague, the one who looks at all this, said, you know what, you should expect to be paying $1.20 by Christmas. That's 10%.
Yeah.
So first of all, why is it so difficult to even guess where these numbers are going?
Well, the reason why the volatility takes place, I believe, is because the retailers are actually shooting prices up very, very quickly. A whole bunch of people are coming into the gas station to fill up, thinking that it's going to get even worse. And then when the media gets a hold of it and consumers start to get upset, then they drop it very, very quickly. So it's a real funky game here with the market. I'm not really a happy camper. Consumers are not happy. And you know what, frankly, Ontarians, we got to make this an election issue for the provincial government coming up in 11 months' time, because these gas prices are quite ridiculous. If you look at the price of a barrel of oil, even 2 years ago when it was at its high, we're almost close to that or even past that, and we're nowhere near the reconciliation.
Trading at today at the end
I think it was about 88 bucks.
So it went down a little bit from yesterday.
So it just doesn't make
None of it's making
sense. It's not making sense.
So in terms of forecasting where the prices are going to go, clearly 10% is on the low side. Where do you think a year from now, what are we going to be paying to fill up?
Well, a year from now, it's anybody's guess. I can crystal ball it just like anyone, Taz. And I'm more convinced about knowing that over the Christmas holidays, it's definitely going to be $1.20. Might be even high as $1.25. Why is that? Because everybody's got to go shopping. Everybody's got to go visit the relatives. And what does that mean? Getting in your car and filling up with gas. And unfortunately, like I've said before, when it comes to gas, you have no choice. It's not one of those purchases that you can put off. When you got to get to a place, you got to fill up with gas. And these refinery companies and the oil companies, they know this.
You can expect the prices of, public transport to go up, transit, maybe goods, vegetables at the supermarket that are trucked in. All of these prices are going to go up.
Anything related to transportation is going to go up.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let's move on to another subject. Earlier this week, we learned that Mountain Crest breweries that make Boxer beer are not opening up a brewery here in Hamilton. Really disappointing news to a lot of us. And they basically said that the beer store has a monopoly on the market. Would you agree with that?
I think this is a perfect example of the big people shoving it to the little people. Here was an opportunity for a couple of entrepreneurs, brother and sister team, to come into Hamilton and give us back some jobs, which is what we are hoping for here in Hamilton. But in order to actually sell the beer at the beer store, which is owned by two very large private companies, they have to do things like have listing fees for $75,000
Let's
for
not
every
mention they are
stock-keeping
foreign
unit.
companies. Foreign-owned companies
That's
as well,
right.
which makes it even harder
Makes
to
it
take.
even harder. Plus, they don't even have control of merchandising. They don't have control of listing. How do you display it at the beer store? In fact, the beer store has so much control, they can actually take your product even off the shelves or even off inventory without you having any control. So unfortunately, that young brother and sister team basically said, you know what, Hamilton, we're going to wait. We love you, which is the good news. We'll come back in the future. But as it stands right now, we're not going to have those 200 jobs that they were going to bring in.
A lot of people are arguing for privatization. Maybe the LCBO should go that way. But then you look at the case of the beer store, and it shows you that kind of whichever way it goes, it seems like the consumer is the one that gets hurt, or the small business.
Yeah, private, public's not making a difference. LCBO, public, beer store, private, it doesn't matter. If you want to monopolize and force consumers to make certain choices and actually limit competition, you can be private or public. Either way, consumers are getting hosed here.
Okay. Let's talk about the new Hamilton Council, which has a new agenda and lots of things that it needs to prove this year, the biggest one being the stadium. What do they need to do to secure the funding and get this thing, get the shovel in the ground?
Okay, so Mr. Mayor, this is what we need to do. We need to actually start with the date that we have to make an ultimate decision and then work backwards from there with specific milestones. Let's keep it open and transparent. No secret negotiations behind dark rooms. Keep it out in the open so all Hamiltonians know exactly what's going on, transparent on the web, on the internet. You have to build the relationships. You're a new mayor. You have to shake the hands of the big private business people in this city who are going to be actually advertising and promoting at the potentially new stadium. We have to make $50 million up in terms of the gap. We got to start working really, really hard. You also, Mr. Mayor, have to share your vision of what you want this stadium to do for the city. That's what has to happen in the short term.
Now, given the fact that this February 1st deadline is fast approaching, do you think it's a mistake for Bob Bertina to be considering other alternative sites? He's talking about Confederation Park. I mean, is it good to have that plan to fall back on, or is it maybe smarter to just focus your energy on the one that might work?
You know, part of me says it's always good to have a backup plan because you never know what's going to happen in the real world. Scenario planning, contingency planning is always a good thing. But to actually take it seriously, I think just brings us backwards, months and months and months backwards. We've already moved ahead. People have been talking about this new location close to the McMaster University MIP Park. People are happy with it. Let's start generating a little bit of momentum. That's my recommendation to Mayor here. Let's start generating a little bit of more momentum with the current location that people are thinking of. Okay,
you know what a lot of people are talking about is the possible sale of Maple Leafs Entertainment. Rogers reportedly looking into it. What's the dollar figure here? 1.3 billion, a huge price tag. Would that be a good investment?
I think it would be a great investment. Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment, one of the crown jewels of sports brand and throughout the world. And you know, the interesting thing about Rogers is they're smart. They know that, you know, they built cable TV for all the masses. You can have a choice of 600 different channels, CHCH being the most important one, of course. But the reality is that people only watch about 10 channels. That's it. And now we have Netflix and we have Apple TV. So what is Rogers saying? You know what? We're cutting down on our cable investment. What we need to do now is re-increase our investment in content. And that's what Maple Leaf Sports and Entertainment provides. Content, basketball, hockey, soccer, the Marlies, and that's what Rogers
is this not a monopoly, though? Isn't this a thing that we don't like to see?
It's a monopoly only in as much as that it's Toronto sports teams. It's not a monopoly for all of sports available in Canada because we have other sports teams in different cities.
We don't have very many baseball teams or football teams.
No, we don't. But the reality is that we have West Coast, you know, fans that follow the West Coast teams, and we have the Quebec fans that follow the Quebec teams. So, you know, here's a piece of advice for Rogers. Maybe you should negotiate with Balsillie and have the brand new BlackBerry playbook stream all these new sporting events. There you go.
Just don't give up with the rim.
Free advice. That's right.
Okay, you know what? I want to ask you really quickly. Do you see a bidding war for the Maple Leafs Entertainment? Because BCE is reportedly interested in this. You see this going past $1.3 billion?
Yeah, I do, because I think in the long run, people are going to realize that this is a very, very important franchise with huge brand equity. So we could have a bidding war. I do agree with that.
Very interesting. So much more we could ask you, but we have run out of time. Always a pleasure having you here. And that's it for Bontis on Business this week. And be sure to check out his website, nickbontis.com.